Hey guys, got the PC Engine out today, and we're going to look at Street Fighter 2 for the PC Engine. Once again, we're thanking Dino the Legend 87 for this one. I've got the PC Engine out. Of course, I have it with the CD-ROM and the interface unit. As I've mentioned before, the interface unit does give you the AV out, so you'll get a better picture than using the RF. And of course, we'll get the stereo sound, which I have this hooked up to the stereo. So that's awesome. I am using the 2-button controller. That's worth mentioning. This game is obviously one I would highly recommend having the 6-button controller for. But if you don't have the 6-button controller, you can still play the game. So here is Street Fighter 2, obviously, for the PC Engine. We'll open that up. We have the instruction book in there with the hue card. The hue card, you may notice, is a little bit thicker, and the black portion comes down a little bit further than most PC Engine games. This, of course, has the bank switching technology. They were able to cram more memory onto this hue card than what NEC had spec'd for. And of course, that made this game possible with all the backgrounds, all the animation, all the sound effects and voice. It's all pretty much here. It's a very good port. They're all good ports, really, the Super Nintendo, the Genesis, and the PC Engine version. But there are some small differences between them. So let's check this out, shall we? I'm going to put the difficulty down a few stars because I am using the 2-button controller. It's obviously a little bit harder with the 2-button controller. You can see we have all the original 8 characters, plus the boss characters, similar to the Sega Genesis version of Champion Edition. I'm going to go for Ken.
Round 1, fight!
So as you can see, the colors are very good. I think this looks and sounds better than the Genesis version. Pretty much on par with the Super Nintendo version, although there are some small details missing. In this level alone, just looking in the background, there are some things you'll notice that are a little different if you compare it to the Super Nintendo version. But I think this controls better than the Super Nintendo version if you have the 6-button controller. Similar to the Genesis controller, one good thing about the Genesis version is that the Genesis 6-button controller does a better job of mimicking the arcade layout with the 3 kicks and the 3 punch buttons all in a row. The PC Engine 6-button controller is similar. You know, on the Super Nintendo with the L and R triggers, there's no logical reason as to which of those buttons is the kick and punch. So having the 6 buttons in a row on the face is definitely better for this game. So that's one reason I prefer the Genesis version, is just for the controls there. Also similar to the Super Nintendo version, there's a little bit of slowdown in this one as well. You'll notice that on the Super Nintendo version, if both your characters shoot fireballs at the same time, and then one of them, either you or the computer player, jumps out of the way. If you have someone jumping around while there's 2 fireballs going on across the screen, there is a little bit of slowdown in both this and the Super Nintendo version. There's definitely less slowdown in the Genesis version. I'm having a real hard... Here we go. With the 2-button controller here, your select button switches between kick and punch, and then your run, 2, and 1 are in the order of low, medium, and high. So low, medium, high, kick or punch, depending on what you're on. So you've got to switch between kick and punch, you know, which you know, obviously you definitely want the 6-button controller for this game, but it's playable. I think it's better than the Genesis version with the 3-button controller, because the start button on the Genesis is what you use to switch, and it's a little further apart from the buttons. On this one, you can hit the select button with your D-pad thumb really pretty quickly and easily. So it's not horrible, but you know, it'd be nice to have the 6-button controller. Now this is a classic song, and listening to this, like I said, the music I think is better than the Genesis version, maybe on par with the Super Nintendo version for the most part. The voice is a little clearer. I find the voice may be the clearest on this one. But yeah, definitely a great port. You know, it runs quick. It runs quick enough. Like I said, a little bit of slowdown in those rare circumstances, just like the Super Nintendo version. But you know, like I said, they're all good ports, really. When it comes down to it, you know, people can argue which one's better, the Super Nintendo one or the Genesis one, and you know, they're really close. A lot of cases, it's not even worth arguing over. But you know, when you take into consideration that this is an older machine than both of those, you know, this is what, a year older than the Genesis or than the Mega Drive, and a few years old, 3 years older than the Super Nintendo.
USA.
You know, when you take into account this machine is 3 years older than the Super Nintendo, and it's an 8-bit processor. You know, and this version is really, you know, for the sake of argument, you know, just as good as that one. You know, Capcom, you know, goes to show you they did a really good job on this port. Why this wasn't brought to the TurboGrafx-16, why we didn't get this over here, I'll never know. This game could have really helped the TurboGrafx-16. You know, what's a little bit late, this was the last port out of the 3. You know, it was ported to the Super Nintendo first, as most of us know, and then the Genesis, and I believe this version came out in 1993, so I mean, yeah, it was a little bit later there too, so. But it would have been nice to see this over here on the TurboGrafx-16, definitely. I don't see why they didn't bring it over here, I mean, once it was done. China! This is a good level here for the colors. There's a lot of colors on this level in the background. And you know, it comes out perfectly on the PC Engine here. You know, there's, you know, really no dullness or anything, you know. All the colors are nice and vibrant. It looks great. Yeah, I've always been a big fan of Street Fighter 2, which is funny because I'm not a huge fan of fighting games. I never really got into the Mortal Kombat games, never really got into the Tekken games, or, you know, really, for the most part, I'm not into the fighting games at all. Oddly enough, though, I've always loved Street Fighter 2. I owned it on the Super Nintendo back in the day, when I had a Super Nintendo. And I think I had Street Fighter 2, actually. It was the first one I ever got on the Super Nintendo. Street Fighter 2 Turbo. And, you know, I've always liked Street Fighter 2. And I'm pretty sure I'm running out of time. Definitely wanted to show you this, guys. Amazing job on the PC Engine. You know, one of the most technically impressive games, in my opinion, for the system. A lot of good shooters on the system, which of course I'm not a huge fan of the shooters, but you know, the fact they went out of their way to find a way to get the extra memory needed on the Hue card, you know, it was pretty cool. Obviously that would have cost them a little more, so maybe that's why they didn't bring it over to the TurboGrafx 16. They didn't think it would sell enough and it wouldn't be worth the cost of producing that cartridge. I don't know, but great game. Definitely, you know, thanks to Dino for sending me that, and of course props to Luke Morse for the PC Engine. See you guys later.